giving cost of living relief for energy across the board, it's an expensive thing to do.
We're here in the budget lockup here in Sydney. We've been through the papers, we've got the budget papers in front of us. So Judith, a $9.3 billion surplus. Is this good news for the economy?
Well, Eric, I think it is what it is. It basically has got very little to do with what the Treasurer's been up to. But I think the more alarming aspect of the budget papers is the fact that we then will have 4 pretty hefty budget deficits in a row. And that, I think, is one of the big stories out of this budget.
And with that, how do things go wrong so quickly? So we're going from 9.3 to almost $30 billion of a deficit next year. That's a $40 billion turnaround. How does that change so quickly?
Well, it's a combination of things, but basically they are a big spending government and they have big spending plans across a whole lot of areas. And then basically they assume that commodity prices will revert to the long-term average, which is considerably lower than it is at the moment. And of course, the tax-free tax cuts are also pretty expensive, and that similarly affects revenue.
I just want to narrow in on a bit of the cost of living, because that whole budget this time around is framed on that. They've got $3.5 billion in terms of energy. It's a real energy relief. So this is a fairly big spending budget. What does that mean for inflation?
I think Jim Chalmers thinks he's discovered the magic lamp. So I think he thinks he can rub the magic lamp and spend on these things, which one might want to do for both political and equity reasons, although giving cost of living relief for energy across the board, it's an expensive thing to do and goes to a lot of people who probably don't need it. But the point about it is that he's in effect assuming that there will be a decline in inflation much more rapidly than the Reserve Bank is suggesting. And that is an absolutely central feature of this budget. If the inflation rate is, the real inflation rate is not down to target by the end of this year, then the prospect of the cash rate and therefore mortgage rates being adjusted down basically evaporate.
So in all this sort of comes together just as the government needs to go back to the electric early next year.
They are actually penciling one in for March next year, but I think they're trying to get out of the blocks, and so I think there are an awful lot of sweeteners across the board. So I would interpret this as an election budget, at least election budget Mark 1.
Election budget Mark 1. Okay, thank you, Judith, from the budget lockup, and thank you